Hello and welcome to Healthy Waves, dear listeners. So it's a podcast where we dive deep into the sea of topics with uh, the help of expert guests who bring their knowledge and insights to our discussion. So I'm your host Avik, and together we will explore everything from personal development and wellness to cutting edge innovations and the transformative practices. So each episode is a journey, definitely through thought provoking conversations designed to inspire, educate, and empower you all. So let's ride these healthy waves together and uncover the wisdom our experts have to share. So today we have with us a special guest. So please join me in welcoming Blair Abee. So welcome to the show, Blair.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
That's really lovely. So before we start our conversation today, I would love to introduce you to all our listeners. Dear listeners, like Blair is an author, poet, educator, consultant, and an ordinary mystic. So he has penned like five award-winning books available on Amazon and written dozen of articles on meditation, manifestations, um, and related topics. Yeah. So Blair, besides himself as an explorer who has developed like various techniques, tools, and ideas that can aid the personal development. So he views each of us as both three-dimensional characters, like living on a planet Earth, and five-dimensional beings having an eternity experience. That's really interesting, right? So after many years of meditation and the yoga and a traumatic experience at a high level job, he developed the higher consciousness meditation. So this transformative period in his life pushed him to deepen his meditation practice, resulting in vibrant new ways to cope with the life's challenges. So his journey is definitely a testament to the resilience and the growth, and his books reflect his profound insights as an observer, yogi, and the toolmaker. So, without further ado, let's welcome again to the show. Welcome to the show again, Blair.
Thank you.
Lovely. So Blair, like to start with, I mean, if you can share your journey and what inspired you to begin writing your book series on
Yes.
meditation and related topics.
I started meditating in 1973 when I moved from the East Coast, North Carolina, to the West Coast of the United States, San Francisco. And
Okay.
almost immediately, I went to an ashram in San Francisco where a fellow by the name of Satchidananda, um,
Oh,
who is an international um, person of importance in the yoga and meditation movement, especially in the mid part of last century,
mhm.
began doing yoga and meditation. Did it for, gosh, 6, 8 months going to the ashram. But then after that, started just doing it at home. And I've been doing meditation and yoga ever since. Um, and it was just part of my ongoing practice of interest in Eastern traditions and my exploration. But it really wasn't until about 8 years ago of it when I had when I moved from the moved back to the East Coast and I moved back to the West Coast after about 20 years. Took a high level job in San Diego. Turned out my boss was a psychopath, um, abusing employees, misusing funds, um, running our program into the ground. And after a while, I just couldn't put up with it. And so I went to the authorities to say, this is going on. An investigation was done. She was fired, but they fired me too because they said I was a troublemaker. Well, in truth, I did make trouble for them by exposing the incompetence in their oversight of our program. And that was devastating, as you can imagine. I took a deep dive into my meditation practice for therapy, began journaling again for therapy, and after about 150,000 words, realized that I had materials for some books. And in the process, began to get a sense of something that I hadn't experienced before in meditation, and that was um, a contact with what I would call my higher consciousness or my soul. And this began a relationship now that I've had with my higher consciousness, which I call High C affectionately, um, um, which in which I began to write and to learn and to understand things that I had never understood before. I feel like what ended up happening was an awakening at that time. Um, and it resulted in books, the development of tools, and all the work that I do now in the area of spirituality and helping people have their own experience of soul contact and have their own experience of awakening.
Wow. So, I mean, when we're talking about this, so uh, you have developed the new and improved meditation system. So, if you can share like how and why it works.
Yes. Um, so my soul, my higher consciousness, my higher self, it kind of showed me a way to meditate for myself, which again is part of the kernel of the development of my materials in my books that I've shared with people now for almost 10 years. Um, and higher consciousness meditation is really intended to take somebody directly to an experience of illumination rather than going the very difficult route, which I went in trying to quiet my mind, wrestle the wild horse, as it's described, of the mind. And the mind doesn't really want to be quiet. It wants to be in control. It wants to try and keep us individually safe by being, you know, reflecting constantly on the past, and exploring the future as a way of trying to keep us safe, but not being in the present moment, not being in the now. But it's really in the now where one has an experience of spirit, where one has an experience of illumination. So rather than spend a lot of time, effort, energy trying to shut the mind up, higher consciousness meditation is really intended to take one directly to an experience of one's higher self or higher consciousness. Um, and it's a simple process that has some steps to it, which include, and I'll just kind of take you through it step by step if you like. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Um, and it begins by just saying to yourself, peace, be still. A real simple mindfulness exercise, by the way, which you can use throughout the day just to quieten yourself down at any moment that you need help in quieting down, or that you just want to take a break and get into your a state of awareness. So, peace, be still is the start of it. And then there are three parts to it, which are open ended statements intended to get some response back from spirit. So it begins with um, just simply stating, um, higher consciousness is,
Okay.
and just waiting for a response and seeing what you get back as a um, as a response, where spirit really wants to, and soul really wants to have a relationship with you. It wants to have contact with you. If what you do is open to it by making just an open-ended statement, then there will be a response. The response might be higher consciousness is my friend. Higher consciousness is my soul. Higher consciousness is um, uh, that which I've been looking for spiritually all this time. In other words, there'll be some kind of response. And really, the thing to do is to just say thank you for that gift. The next open ended statement is the all or God is, and seeing what you get back in response to just again an open ended statement, which is an invitation for some response from um, spirit, and that the kinds of things that you might get back. The all is eternal consciousness. The all is the source of all life. The all is the source of five-dimensional reality, or the spirit that informs three-dimensional reality. So you begin to get, by just opening up yourself to that, you begin to get responses. Now, it's not that you're going to get necessarily immediate responses back, although you might. It might take a little while, like any meditation practice takes a little bit of practice. But again, I think your higher self wants to have that relationship, so it's ready to respond. And then you finish the exercise again by saying thank you to God, to the all, for some kind of response. You finish the practice by saying to yourself, I live, move, and have my being in higher consciousness. It's just a way of sort of completing that exercise, and then just relax into the feeling that you get, the experience that you have of contact with the all, with spirit, with eternity, and with your soul. So it's real simple, real straightforward. It only takes a few minutes, but then you can kind of sit back and sort of relax and bask in the glow of the understandings that begin to come to you. And you can see then how you might have fairly soon a sense of illumination, because your vibratory rate um, increases, and having contact with your soul is a fabulous experience, and one I think that we all would like to have if we're seekers for spiritual understanding.
That's really interesting, I'd say. Yeah. So on this, definitely would love to talk about your. You mentioned that sit down and mindfulness meditation can complement each other. So,
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
Okay. So the process that I describe, just just described, is really a sit down meditation. You sit down perhaps cross-legged, or you sit down in a chair and you do this higher consciousness meditation practice, which I describe in a lot of detail, in the book. But during the day, it's nice to tune up from time to time and remind yourself of not only your day-to-day activities and your three-dimensional commitments to life, but also of your higher self, or to increase your awareness. And so there are mindfulness practices that I offer. One of which is peace, be still, and again, that one's one you can use anytime. Just do it internally, and you'll find yourself just kind of rising up for a moment, and that helps you keep tuned up. Or You can do a mindfulness practice, which is reminding yourself when you go through doors. Just have going through a door be a trigger for remember who you are, not just to be, so focused on the mind chatter and your day-to-day activities, but just take a breath and remember yourself as an eternal being, not just a human being.
Yeah.
And so that tune up gives you a chance to, and using these mindfulness practices, and I offer a number of mindfulness practices in my mindfulness book, which can be used for different situations. Whether you're about to go into a difficult conversation, or whether you're about to go give a talk or be in a meeting, or there are different mindfulness practices that you can use along the way, again, that are intended to kind of wake you up for a moment.
True.
And that's how they complement each other, because they're both meditation practices, but one's a short tune up and the other is a longer sit down. So I do the longer sit down in the morning, I do the longer sit down in the evening, and then I do the mindfulness practices throughout the day.
Understood. Understood. That's great. So also, I mean, also you say like soul contact,
Yes,
and again, if you can share like what do you mean by soul contact?
yes,
How does one achieve it?
understand. Well, I think all of us, at least those who have explored spirituality to any degree whatsoever, know that there's more than just three-dimensional reality. Know that there's more than just meets the eye. And I think many of us have a sense, even if we've never had an experience, that there's a higher part of us. There's a soul part of us that is part of our journey, but which we don't have much contact with, because we never get trained in how to have a soul contact experience. None of your teachers ever taught you that. None of your spiritual leaders ever taught you that, primarily because they didn't even know themselves. Um, and it's hard to transmit that unless somebody is just real clear with you in an explanation of how to do it. So the practices that I mentioned, especially the higher consciousness meditation practice, really is intended for one to have contact with their higher self or with their soul. And if you just open to it, again, soul or spirit will respond immediately. I mean, it's already sitting inside of you, waiting for you to offer the opportunity to have a relationship with that. And every person is going to have their own way of unfolding that. Um, you might do what I do, which is journaling and having spirit seem like it's just flowing through your fingers onto the computer screen, or you might do meditation and you may have a experience of your awareness just rising up into a higher state of consciousness. But I think it's there, it's always there, and it's always available.
Got it. So also like you have set a sacred sense of mindfulness practices. So
Yes,
if you can share also.
sure. So one set of mindfulness practices in my book, the Mindfulness Book, is about sacred senses. I think all of our senses have a sacred element to them. Again, we have to, and these are tools really that I'm offering to people, but you have to be aware then of such tools to use them. For example, um, sacred seeing. One of the things that I experienced, and once you experience something like this, you begin to experience it over and over, was going into a grocery store and pausing for a second and taking a deep breath and sort of fuzzing up my eyes and looking out from the higher consciousness part of me. And what I began to see was auras around people. I began to see in a grocery store the essence of people, and um, uh, and it was a startling experience. It was like, hmm. And so I began to practice that. I began to see my children with sacred eyes. I began to see my wife with sacred eyes. I began to see my coworkers with sacred eyes. And when you do that, all of a sudden you see an element of who they are that you never recognized before because you weren't um, in a state of mind which would allow you to see such things. But it's right there again, it's right there, it's available. But it just takes some practice. So, sacred hearing, sacred touching, um, even sacred, uh, you know, uh, speaking, sacred eating, eating quietly, um, tasting the food in its very essence, appreciating the supply chain that brought that food to you, sort of a act of appreciation or gratitude. Um, these are all things that I put into a category of sacred senses that kind of take our five senses to a higher uh, plane of reality.
Understood. So also, uh, you have written about the Christ consciousness. So what is that?
Yes, understand. Uh, I grew up in a Christian church,
Okay.
fairly conservative Christian church, and what I heard as a youth was um, Jesus Christ is the only Son of God, and you're supposed to, and that's the way to a heavenly experience after death. Well, so I thought Jesus' last name was Christ, like Smith or whatever, because I heard
Mm.
it so often. And then as I grew up, I realized, well, no, they're not talking about his last name being Christ. It's a it's a term like Mister, but it really is a term of expression related to somebody who has reached a level of higher consciousness or Christ consciousness. Krishna was a Christed consciousness being. He was a Christed being. Um, Buddha was a Christed being. They had Christ consciousness. They were aware of their reality and the reality of of the universe on a plane that most of us are not aware of. But but the term Christ really is one that indicates a level of consciousness that is right there in one with spirit, right there in one with God. So it's really a term for somebody who's just reached that level of awareness or reached that level of consciousness. And of course, there are many people throughout history that have had that kind of awareness. And they're not to be deified, they are to be listened to for the pointings which say, this is my experience. Let me point you in the same direction or of having your own similar experience of Christ consciousness. And I think really that's what our master teachers in most cases were about.
Understood. That's lovely. Yeah. So, I mean, you have an interesting manifestation called best possible outcomes. So,
Yes,
how does that work? Yeah.
yes. Well, so I think maybe it was 20, 25 years ago,
Hmm.
I began to be aware of. people talking about manifesting. And there was a book and a movie that came along called The Secret, and that made a big splash. And a lot of people began really focusing on that as a way of perhaps trying to create their own reality and perhaps even trying to manifest things that they wanted or felt like they needed. The problem with that approach is that it's in many ways an ego bound approach. I'd like a BMW. I'd like a BMW to appear in my driveway tomorrow. And so I'm going to use I'm going to use, I'm going to say over and over again, I want a BMW appearing in, or using vision boards and putting your BMW up on a picture and looking at it all the time and trying to create from that approach. I found that didn't work very well. And I realized again that part of the reason that it doesn't work very well is that it's very ego bound. And, maybe you don't need a BMW. Maybe what you need is a truck. Maybe the likelihood of a BMW appearing in your driveway tomorrow, maybe that's not the best way or the most likely outcome of your desire for a BMW in your driveway. So I created, really, again, as a result of my experience with higher consciousness, I created a best possible outcomes manifestation process. It actually works pretty well, and it goes like this. I ask, so it's an asking or a request for the best possible outcome as it relates to my need for transportation. And then pausing, getting quiet, and getting a sense that your higher consciousness or spirit has engaged, that has heard your request. And then offering a thank you for spirit's involvement or your soul's involvement in your life around this particular concern. So what that does is make it very general. It's not a specific request for a 2024 BMW. It's for a generalized, I have needs for transportation, and it turns over the response to that to spirit to offer you that which you most need for your greatest evolution and for your highest, your greatest growth. It doesn't dictate to spirit what you want. It doesn't say, God, deliver me this thing tomorrow. It says, I'm open to the best possible outcome for me for this particular concern or need that I have. So it's a real spiritual approach rather than an ego approach. And I find it works great, and you can use it for anything. A parking place, a best possible outcome in my conversation with Avik, today, or whatever you want to use it for.
Exactly. That's totally lovely, I would say. Yeah, great. And also, wrap, like, how about gratitude? How does it work?
Yes.
How can it be effectively incorporated
Yes.
in our daily lives?
Well, the interesting thing about gratitude, and in fact, the interesting thing about the law of attraction is that like attracts like. So if you have an elevated state of awareness or an elevated state of consciousness, or if you're just happy, it's more likely that good things, people, and circumstances are going to appear in your life. I mean, it's just the law of attraction. The like attracts like. If you're constantly in the dark, you're likely to attract dark experiences. If you're in the light, you're likely to experience activities that are light-filled activities. So gratitude is really a way of just raising up your vibratory rate and thanking the universe, spirit, for that which you have, And by the law of attraction, more things will be attracted to you as a result of gratitude. So, gratitude is really a way of thanking spirit for whatever. Um, Sometimes I thank the supply chain for all the food and everything that comes into my life. It's it's a it's just a way of acknowledging that my life is um, is supplied by that which I need. And thank you for
Exactly.
that.
True. True. And also, I'd like to mention here. We got one comment also, like from Lotus. Uh, so mention that when you're thought of uh, what you want, and your feeling of having it is followed, one can manifest. So, what do you want to say?
Well, it's human to want things. I mean, we all want to have better circumstances, whether we're out on the streets homeless or whether we are, in a really nice surroundings and so on. We all have desires for improvement to that.
Yeah.
Um, and often when we get things that we really want, that our ego says, I gotta have that. It's not all that satisfying. It's really satisfying, however, if what's happening is that you're allowing that which you need and want, and you're acknowledging spirit or the universe as the supplier of those things. um, it's satisfying. Getting just a little something in the mail, or a little gift, or a little compliment, or whatever. That's really where the juice comes from, is being open to the unfolding of your life in such a way as you are thankful. And that goes back to gratitude, really, for the fact that you're alive and the fact that life is unfolding. And the more you do that, the more good things are attracted to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really lovely, really lovely. And I'd also like to thank Lotus and other listeners also who are listening this, and also I believe so. The main reason behind this is to create this awareness, because somehow in this fast-paced world, in this uh, too much of informations, here we somehow lose the clue, like what we actually looking for and what we need. So that is the best part of it, which we are trying to create this awareness. And yes, it's nevertheless, it's needless to mention that without all of your support, with all of your I mean, I definitely always thank my guests, because it is because of them only I'm trying to push things and trying to make this awareness. So it's really important. So yes, Lotus, so awareness is definitely the key. So totally agree. So yeah, so
And
with that,
if you'd like to give people a free copy of my mindfulness book, we'll
definitely,
put that in the show notes, and they
sure.
can just go to my website, which is highcmeditation.com, and they can get a free copy of the mindfulness book and see some of the things that I've written about, and some of my current activities and the books that I've written and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly, definitely. I'll put this book link into the show notes, so that it will be much easier for every one of you to have the book, read it, share your feedback. Definitely, would love to listen from all of you. And the main aim is all needs to be happy, all needs to be good. So that's the main aim behind this. And with this, definitely, thank you so much, Blair, for sharing your incredible journey and the insights that you shared with us today. It's really important. And
Well, thank you.
you, yeah, you're welcome. So your work in the meditation and the personal development is truly inspiring and offers the valuable uh, guidance for anyone who is actually seeking to enhance their well-being. So thank you again, and for the listeners, I hope that you have found this conversation as enlightening as I did. It's really very important and close to me as well. So do not forget to check out Blair's book. I'll put it into the show notes, and also explore his innovative uh, practices, the meditation practices. So, if you have enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Healthy Waves for more deep dives into wellness and the personal growth. So, until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep riding those healthy waves. So, thank you so much.
Namaste.